Hello students, till now we learned that a cluster of cells which carry out a particular function in the body of an organism is called a tissue. We also learned that we can categorize tissue based on two broad categories, animal tissue and plant tissue. We know that plants are non-motile while animals are motile, and therefore the energy requirement of animal body is way more than that of a plant body. Therefore, the animal tissues are a little different from plant tissues. Also, the animal tissues are mostly living in nature, whereas we learned that plant tissues can be living as well as mostly non-living in nature to give them more strength. So, in today's class, we will learn in detail about the various types of animal tissues. There are four primary types of animal tissues. Those are epithelial tissue, connective tissue, muscle tissue, and nervous tissue. In today's class, we will discuss in detail about subcategories of all these four types of tissues, and also will learn in detail about various kinds of epithelial tissues and muscle tissues. In the next class, we will learn about connective tissue and nervous tissue. So let's learn the basic function of these four types of tissues. Epithelial tissues covers the body of the animal, not only from outside, but it also lies the organs and all the cavities which are present in the body. So wherever a lining needs to be made, it is made up of epithelial tissue layers. Connective tissue, as the name suggests, is mainly responsible for binding and supporting other tissues. Nervous tissues senses the stimuli, the external stimuli, and then transmit those signals from one part of the body to the other part of the body. The muscle tissues receive the nerve impulses which are sent by the nervous tissues, and their main role is for the movement of the body. So muscle tissues are responsible for the movement, and they do so with the help of contractile proteins which contract and relax to cause this movement to happen. Now let us learn in detail about various types of tissues. As I told you earlier, the tissues are of four types: epithelial, muscular, connective, and nervous. Nervous tissues are also called neural tissues. Now let's see into all the categories to which we can divide further epithelial tissues. Now epithelial tissues, as you can see in this flow chart, is further divided into many categories. There is a simple flat kind of epithelium tissue which is called simple squamous epithelium. If this simple squamous epithelium gets arranged into different patterns of layers, it is called stratified squamous epithelium. So we have simple made up of one layer, and if the layers are arranged one above the other, we call that stratified squamous epithelium. Based on the shape of the cell, further the epithelial tissues can be called columnar if the cells are columnar in shape, or cuboidal if they are cube in their shape. Now, if the columnar epithelium have cilia present over them, we will learn about that in detail, that what is the function of the cilia. But first understand that if the columnar epithelium has cilia over them, then they are called ciliated columnar epithelium. And if an epithelial tissue will have some folds which is responsible for the formation of a gland-like structure which will secrete certain substances, we will call that kind of epithelium as glandular epithelium. So how many categories we have? We have 6 categories. Simple, which is just a single layer. Stratified, which is multiple layers. If the shape is columnar, we call it columnar epithelium. If the shape is cuboidal, we call it cuboidal epithelium. If it has a cilia, we call it ciliated columnar epithelium. And if there are gland-like structures present, we call them glandular epithelium. Muscular tissues are divided into 3 broad categories: striated, non-striated, and cardiac muscles. That also we will learn in detail later. And let's now see into the categories of connective tissues. Now, proper connective tissues supportive connective tissues and fluid connective tissues. So the proper connective tissues are areolar tissue, adipose tissue and fibrous tissues. The connective tissues which provide support are called into two categories, cartilage and bone. And we all know this our fluid connective tissue, which is the blood and the lymph. And also in tomorrow's class we will learn about the nervous tissue. So let's learn in detail about epithelial tissue. As I told you, all the epithelial tissue forms the cover or the protective, acts as a protective tissue in the body of the animal. So where will they be present? They will be present as the outer body lining or the skin, and also covers all the organs and cavity which are present inside the body of the animal. So they act as a barrier and also helps in keeping different body systems separate from each other. So starting from our skin to the lining of our mouth, blood vessels and all the organelles, they will have an epithelial tissue covering. Okay. So since their job is protection and acting as a barrier, therefore they should be tightly packed and therefore they should form a continuous sheet. So they will have very little intercellular space between them. Okay. So because of their function to act as a barrier, their permeability is very important. So what comes inside the body or what goes outside from the body to the external environment, that all depends on the permeability of these tissue layer. Okay. And as you can see in the diagram, irrespective of where the epithelial tissue is placed, they will be separated by the underlying tissues by an extracellular fibrous basement membrane. So as you can see in all those epithelial tissue which have been given here, there is a blue color separate fibrous membrane is shown, which will separate the epithelial tissue layer from any tissue which is below that layer. Their name is very much related to the function or the shape which these tissues are made up of. So the squamous epithelium is a simple flat kind of epithelium, whereas stratified will have multiple layer of such simple epithelial tissue. So simple is single layer, stratified is multiple layer. Cuboidal is cube shaped cell and columnar is column shaped cell. Ciliated epithelium, ciliated columnar, as you can see, are columnar in shape with some cilia present over them, while glandular epithelium will be responsible for secretion of certain substances from them. So now let's learn in detail. So let's start with the first simplest of all the epithelial tissue, which is the simple squamous epithelium. Now these types of tissues will have cells which will be extremely thin and flat. So they will just form a very delicate lining. Such lining is present in the inner lining of the mouth and also the esophagus. The second category is stratified squamous epithelium. Now stratified means there will be multiple layers. Okay, so where will we require multiple layers? Where more protection is required, and more protection is required in the outside of our body so that we can withstand the adverse conditions. So these many layers will prevent wear and tear of the body. So where are they present? As stratified means multiple layers and they will be present in the skin. Now, as the name suggests, columnar epithelium will have a shape which is column-like or the pillar-like. Now, this column-like shape will facilitate the movement across this epithelial barrier. So, where we need more absorption, where we need more secretion, in such areas, the columnar epithelial will be present. So, what are such areas? Such areas are those absorptive or secretory surface like the inner lining of the intestine. So in the inner lining of intestine we have this column shaped epithelium which will help in the movement across the epithelial tissue layer. At some places these columnar epithelium cells will contain a hair-like structure or a hair-like projection, on the outer surface of the cells. Okay, and these hair-like projections are called cilia. Such ciliated columnar epithelial cells are present in the respiratory tract. And what's their function? The function is that these cilia can move, and because of their movement, it pushes the mucus forward and clears that respiratory tract. As the name suggests, cuboidal epithelial. Cuboidal epithelial will be cubed shape, and therefore the name comes from their shape. And they will be present in the inner lining of kidney tubules and the ducts of salivary glands. And since they are stronger, they will provide the mechanical support to these structures. When the epithelial cells acquire some specialization, such as when they are able to secrete substances, some substances will be secreted from their surface, they are called glandular epithelial. Now such cells will be formed when the epithelial is folded inward, and thus they become the glandular epithelium. So they will be found wherever we have secretory glands. Now let's come to the second categories of tissue, which is the muscular tissues. The muscular tissues are basically responsible to provide movement to our body, and they have a special type of protein which is called the contractile protein. As the name suggests, the contractile protein can contract and relax, and because of this contraction and relaxation, the movement occurs. The first category which we will study will be the striated muscular tissue. The name has come from the fact that when these tissues are observed under microscope, they appear to have certain light and dark bands or striations. Okay, when they are stained, they appear to have light and dark band patterns. Therefore, they are called striated tissues. These striated muscle tissues are long and cylindrical in shape, and they are unbranched, and they are multinucleated. That means they have multiple nuclei present in them. So where are these striated muscle tissues present? They are also called skeletal muscles, and these tissues are voluntary muscles. What does it mean? Voluntary muscles means that we can move these muscles at our will. Okay, so the muscles which are present in our limbs, our hand, our legs, we decide when to move them and when to stop them. So they are called voluntary muscles. They are under our control, and they are also called skeletal muscles. Okay, and they are mostly attached to the bones and help the body to move. And why are they called striated? I already told you, because of the light and dark colored band which is present over them. Now the second category is the unstriated muscle tissues. Now as the name suggests, they will not have any kind of light dark pattern like striated muscles. Okay, and the striated muscle tissues are called voluntary. That means they are under our direct control. But these unstriated muscle tissues are involuntary in nature. That means wherever the movement is not under our control, we will have such type of muscles. So where are they present? We know that the movement of food which happens in our alimentary canal, or for example the contraction and relaxation of blood vessels, all such movements are involuntary. We cannot either start them or stop them. So such are under the unstriated muscle category or involuntary muscle, or they are also called as smooth muscles. So they will be found in blood vessels, in the iris of the eye, in our uterus, in the respiratory tract, in the bronchi of the lungs. Okay, so they are, what is their shape? Their cells are long and pointed towards the end. Okay, the striated one were cylindrical and long, but these are not cylindrical, they are pointed towards their end. Striated were multinucleated, while unstriated or involuntary are having only a single nucleus. Now there is another part in our body where the muscles are not under our control. They are involuntary, but they are separately categorized as the cardiac muscle because they are present in the heart. What is their shape? Their shape is also cylindrical like the voluntary muscles, but remember voluntary muscles were unbranched, whereas cardiac muscles are branched. Voluntary muscles were multinucleated while cardiac muscles are uninucleated. And the muscles of the heart, which are the cardiac muscles, as I told you, they show rhythmic contraction and relaxation throughout their life. Okay, so now you please note down the shape and the presence and the number of nucleus and the function and the area where these kinds of muscles are present in detail, and you can make a tabular form record for your notes. So here I have given you again tabular form of all the different types of muscle tissues, what are their common characteristics, their peculiar feature and the function. So earlier I gave you a similar table for the epithelial tissues, and here is the muscle tissue. Please note them down in your journal, it's very important.